Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a key holder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 140. You know where to find us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and just a whole lot of other places. Hey, you know, we're all listed on the website, themeadhouse.com, to check out the front page right there on the left-hand side. You can pick one and subscribe. The Mead House, produced for home mead makers and brewers just like you, looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. Hey, talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, both at the Mead House, or you can just simply email us at info@themeadhouse.com. Hey, my name's JD Webb. Jeff and Ryan are both here. Jeff happens to be sitting out in the gazebo tonight. What's up with that? Ryan and I are at the bar. But hey, we got a heck of a show planned for you tonight. You know, like many other homemakers, an addiction leads to obsession, which evolves into becoming a BJCP certified mead judge and 3 major cup awards. Home mead maker Joe Lee joins us at the bar tonight. And in segment 2, hey, structure, balance, achieving that mouthfeel that everyone talks about. Hey, we're going to discuss that and how to get there here tonight. And of course, segment 3, Facebook friends and Reddit friends, all of our friends. That's where we try to answer a few questions with no formal expertise other than what we have learned in our own brew house. All that and more here at the Mead House. This is really important, guys. Thanks to all of our Mead House key holders. You guys really help keep the Mead House podcast free, and we appreciate it. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts to send you. So get on over to patreon.com, search the Mead House, or just click the link in the show notes. What are we drinking, Ryan and Jeff? Before we get there, I wanted to play this cut. Let's go back to the Valkyrie's Horn, one of the after parties. I think this was Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken. We met up with Roger Gibson. I believe, Ryan, wasn't he the gold medalist in the Braggot category?
He is, and he is from Jeff's neck of the woods. I think he's the Kansas City Beermeisters.
Yeah, I believe he is.
Excellent. Sounds good. Hey, let's play this cut from Roger. He's talking about his winning entry. Hey, this is JD with the Mead House. We're at the after party after the Valkyrie's Horn medal ceremony today. I'm talking to Roger with his winning Braggot. What was your inspiration?
Well, actually, I made this for my daughter's wedding, and it was in August in Missouri, so it was hotter than hell at that time. So I wanted something light and tasty, bright. So I wanted something basically. I wanted the honey flavor to come through, but I wanted to put some German hops in it, so I used Herzberger as a bittering hop, and and I used Saaz, because it's one of my favorite hops too, really floral, and I put that in as a flavor hop, and his extract, you know, I'm not going to hide from extract.
What kind of malt? What malt did you use?
A wheat malt, yeah.
Something different.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like to use Pilsner, and pretty much runs the gamut, but this is the first wheat malt braggot that I've heard of.
Well, you know, I've always heard of, you know, there's a lot of honey wheat beers out there, but I thought it would it'd work real good, and I made it, and this is my second batch of it because I liked it so much. And the funny thing was, I bottled it, and I tried a bottle, you know, after about a month is sitting in a bottle, and it was flat as hell. And I thought, oh, this stuff's no good, and because I wanted it sparkling.
Right.
And so I waited another month, and I pulled the bottle out, and just because, I'll try another bottle. And it was vivacious. It was sparkling, and it was wonderful. I said, well, I like it. I'm going to enter it and see what everyone else thinks. And that's basically what I did. I didn't even think I'd win at this thing, but especially, you know, usually I think a lot of braggots, especially up here in Minnesota, I think everybody's going to, you know, it's going to be, you know, 15, 16% braggot, you know, a barley wine kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
But I really appreciate that they enjoyed the subtle, light character of it. I thought it was really good, and I'm thankful for the judges, and I'm happy to be here.
Hey, thanks, Roger. You know, I got a taste of that there at the after party. Actually, I think it was at the maybe it was at the after party. It was good stuff, and he did bring some bottles of other things that he made. He's quite the mead maker. So, Roger, thanks a million, guy, and congratulations on the medal. At Valkyrie's Horn, what are we drinking tonight? I want to start it off as usual. I'm 2 fists in it tonight. In one Glencairn, Jeff, I got my box from Sap House, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've cracked open California Stars yet.
I have.
But, oh, my God, Ash has hit this one out of the park. I mean, this is a Star Thistle honey, I believe, aged for 2 years in a port barrel. And right off the bat, the aroma, you get this mixture of honey, and I detect the slight port wine aroma in the background. It's kind of deep, but it's there. And then when you take a sip, it's a little mild sweetness up front, and then starting on the mid palate or so, it starts working that port influence from the barrel all the way to the finish. I'm telling you, this is another one that sits on my desk next to my Smoky Pete in a very special place. So Ash at Sap House, you guys really knocked it out of the park with this one. In my other fist, I am a bourbon whiskey drinker, Scotch drinker now. Thank you, Ryan. And in my other fist, I'm drinking High West whiskey Campfire. Now, this is a blended, kind of an oddball thing, but I tell you, if you're a Scotch drinker, you're gonna love this one. This is a rye, a blend of rye and bourbon and Scotch malt whiskey. And like I said, if you like nice smoky scotches, this is out of this world. High West Campfire whiskey, good stuff. I'm digging it. Jeff, let's go to you, my friend. I know you've always got something good in your cup. What is it tonight?
So, in Mead House fashion, I am double fisting it. My first bottle is a callback from Valkyrie's Horn, and it is my commemorative bottle from Kurt Stock. He made a commemorative mead using some blackcurrant, some raspberries, and some Nanking cherries, if I'm not mistaken. and it was not stabilized or anything like that. It was just fresh in the bottle. It came with a lot of repeated warnings to refrigerate, and I must have done a good job because no fizz when I opened this guy up. But man, this is a Kurt Stock mead. There's a lot of fruit forwardness, and it's not cloying. It's all there, and you can pick out each individual fruit. You can taste the black currant, and the raspberry kind of comes in like right up front. You get some of the tannin from the black currant over the mid palate, and the cherry comes along there, and the black currant really finishes off. It has that lingering aftertaste to it. Just really delicious, really full-bodied mouthfeel. If you like the sweet, fruity meads, this Kurt Stock style is there's nothing else you can compare it to. And then, in my other hand, I have one that I know you'd already talked about a couple weeks ago. It was Ryan's Citrus Braggot, which I am really enjoying. It's got a citrusy hoppiness and then some other citrus character to it. There's I think if I remember right, you'd mentioned there was blood orange in this, Ryan?
Yes.
And I'm getting the oranginess, I'm getting the citrusy hops, and it finishes really, really crisp. Today is probably going to be the last warm-ish day I can sit out of my gazebo and enjoy the night air before we get into really cold weather. So, yeah, this is just absolutely perfect for tonight.
That sounds good. I'm just laughing, sitting out of my gazebo the last night. Dude, it was like 90 degrees here today in Southern California, so bring that gazebo.
I think we might have gotten up to 72 today if I was lucky.
Bring that gazebo to my house. We'll just sit it out here next to the pool. Good stuff. Ryan, as a home mead maker, sometimes you come up with some of the most unusual things in your cup. What is it tonight?
Wow, you're putting the pressure on.
Absolutely.
Sorry, it's like a letdown for you. First of all, that High West campfire is delicious. I like that one a lot as well, and it's kind of almost a hybrid between a bourbon and maybe a Highland Scotch or a very kind of smoky one. So it's Islay. Very good stuff there. The other one in my cup, because we played that clip from Roger, and JD, you kind of made you said you hadn't heard of wheat malt being the base of a braggot.
Right.
That's what I do. I do a lot of wheat. Pilsen is typically what I do more than any other malt for the base of my mead. My Pilsen is the base I use for most of my braggots, but I do use wheats as well, and that's what's in this citrus braggot that Jeff is drinking, and that's what I'm also put in my cup tonight was the citrus braggot, which is the wheat malt base. And I also really liked how Roger said that he doesn't shy away from using extracts, malt extracts.
Right.
There was a time when they really got a bad rap, and people, said, "Oh, it's not a good beer." There are a lot so extracts have gotten immensely better over the last several years, but the way of using them has also gotten a lot better over the years as well. So, I also use extracts from time to time, and I tell people that you can use them and make some great stuff with them, just like Roger Gibson making a gold medal braggot, with a wheat malt extract base.
Right.
So good job to him. And yeah, I'm enjoying this. I just have one cup tonight, but I've got a very big bottle of it. So I'll
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So I said a couple of weeks ago on the show that I tried some great meads at Valkyrie's Horn. We all did, and we were I'd love to have some of those crafters of those meads on the show, and talk about them and just sit down at the bar with us and have a chat. So tonight we have Joe Lee joining us. Joe is a software architect, and file that away and remember that. We'll bring that back up later on here. Joe got addicted to mead back in 2014 when he tried a bottle of Schramm's Black Agnes at a beer share.
Oh, wow.
He quickly spent the next couple of years trading for all the best meads. In that clip, Roger said he thought, it'd take like a barley wine braggot to win up in Minnesota. And that's probably, like Surly Darkness. Surly's made up here, and Surly Darkness, especially the barrel-aged Darkness, is really good. And, people trade for that all the time. So it kind of reminds me here of Joe, trading for all the best meads, all probably limited release meads, and that kind of thing. 3 years later, he finally made his own mead in 2017. So just 2 years ago, fell in love with the science of it and made a bunch of small batches testing single variables, like it was software. See, remember I told you guys to remember that he was a software architect and bring it back here to mead making. A year later, Joe won his first medal at a beer competition, and that quickly turned into many more medals at many more competitions, putting him in the top 10 in the AMA 2018 Mead Maker of the Year list. This year at Mazer Cup, after becoming a certified BJCP mead judge, he brought home 3 Mazer Cups. Congratulations. He is currently spending all his free time making mead and working on opening Zymeria Meadery in Orlando, Florida. Welcome to the bar, Joe, and what's in your cup tonight?
Hey, thank you for having me. I am currently drinking my Tej from Valkyrie's Horn, and also my Black Agnes Homage, which is big, bright black currants.
He must be listening to the show.
So, Joe, do you have your score sheets on that Tej?
I can bring them up real quick.
Yeah. I got to. Well, we tried the Tej, and we wanted to bring him on. That was kind of the first thing I thought about when I did that. And tell us about while you're maybe pulling that up. Tell us about that mead. It's an Ethiopian style, and tell us how you put it together.
Yeah, so that one's funny. My wife got a real big laugh out of it when I told her I was coming on the show for that mead. I made it with so AMMA did a big Zambian honey order last year, and so I got a bucket, and this honey is like straight chocolate tobacco cherry. It's super smoky. It's the most bold honey I've ever encountered. So I figured it took a challenge, and I wanted to make a traditional out of it to kind of see what the honey would do on its own. And I picked a yeast that would complement those flavors, and I ended up going with Close, CLOS, all uppercase. And it talked about chocolate notes and dark fruit, so I figured that would be perfect for this honey. And I fermented it nice and cold to preserve all the aromatics. And when it was done, it still had all that, it kept all the smoke, and which kind of gave it a phenolic, almost Band-Aid. I'm not a smoke beer person, so it was kind of an unpleasant mead. Fermentation was really good, but that honey fermented was crazy. So I didn't really know what to do with it, and just kind of sat on it, bulk aged it for a couple months, and decided, maybe I'll do a 1 gallon of Tej. I'll order some Gesho root and play around with that, kind of going with the African honey theme. And I only had the root in for a few days, but it added a lot of that bitterness that I was hoping for, because I guess Gesho root is kind of used as a wood hop, so just a bittering agent to balance the sweetness. But once I pulled the root out, the mead was just tons of big flavors. I back sweetened it a little, tried to balance out the bitterness and try and cover up some of that smokiness with some fresh Zambian, and it was a monster of a mead, and I didn't really enjoy it, so I just kind of bottled it up and forgot about it for a year. And then I was running low on meads to send into all the competitions this year, and so I opened the bottle to see how it was doing, and it turned out, after a year of mellowing, quite nice. Very subtle smoke. It faded into the background. All the root and bitterness pretty much faded almost completely, and it kind of just tasted like some chocolate and some dark fruit, maybe a little apricot. So it was interesting enough that I wanted to send it in and get some feedback, because I really didn't know what to think about it.
You know, a lot of times, Joe, on the show, we talk about how quick it is to make meads anymore. I mean, we've been dealing with some Kavikis that, within 10 days from start to finish in the bottle.
I love that yeast.
Yeah, a lot of us do. Sometimes we just, I don't know, I'm old school when it comes to a lot of things. And to me, time in a bottle seems to, bring out some of the better flavors and things. How did you find, or were you surprised at the changes in this mead?
Very much. It was definitely not enjoyable fresh, even though I gave all the nutrient additions and cold ferment, so it was a real good fermentation, but all the flavors, I just couldn't get over the weird fermented smoke and tobacco.
Yeah.
So it was too much, and I didn't think anything could help that except time.
I just sometimes I just think we tend to get in a big hurry about things, and I'm glad that this thing worked out for you. Over the course of, like I say, time in a bottle. Just leave it sit. Ryan, I know you got tons of questions for Joe, but go ahead. I just want to squeeze that one in real quick.
No, go ahead. Joe, let me know when you pull up those score sheets.
I got them. Yeah.
So, refresh my memory. You recognize any of the names on there of the judges?
There's some Ryan Richardson guy. And it looks like Steve Sletty was the second one.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on the show, especially after getting the score sheet back from me.
How much did you have to pay him, Joe? Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's funny reading the sheet, and I agree that right now, especially cold, it's way too sweet. But when it was first fresh, when I made it, that root added so much bitterness. I just tried to balance it up way back when, and I haven't tinkered with it since. So normally I tinker with the meads a lot for balance, but this one I just tinkered with once and then kind of bottled it, and it really wasn't something I was proud of.
So Tej is a very interesting style in that it's, let's just say chili, and that, because people can relate to chili, so you go to, Carolina and you get one kind of chili, you go to Cincinnati, you get another kind of chili, you go to, Southwest, you get another kind of chili, and even from house to house, you get different kinds of chili, and it's very, 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 very different. Some people use beans, some people use steak, some people, are vegetarian, some people use chicken, some are white chilies, some are, red chilies, some are just all over the place. Some are spicy, some are savory, all that kind of thing. but it's all chili. And that's about the best analogy I can come up with on the fly about Tej, in that it's extremely different, not just from region to region in Ethiopia, but from household to household. And it's a lot made, by individual families and households and that kind of thing. And I had also always thought that Tej was made with the Geshu root, and like you did, Joe. Now, another Tej entry into Valkyrie's Horn made hers with Geshu leaves, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was first of all, it was fantastic mead, but it brought an entirely different dimension to a Tej, and I had to look it up, and I was like, what did she, what's she doing here? But no, it's like I said, household to household. Like first time you'd ever see a white chili, you might not think this is chili. It's not red, it's white or cream colored. First time I had one with the leaves, I thought the same thing. Very, very different, but it was very delicious. So, Joe, getting back to yours, which was kind of the more probably commonly known of with that root, have you made Tejas before? Have you played around with Geshu, or what's or was this kind of a one-shot experiment for you?
Yeah, it was definitely a one-shot. Normally I play around with the ingredients a lot and try and get a feel for them and how to work with them, but this was just a one-shot, and I had never had it before. I did the place I ordered the root from, they had the leaves also, and the only information I could really find for advice was, I think it's Bernard's website, and he's the guy who did Bomb, came up with that recipe, and he recommended the roots over the leaves, so I just went with that, not knowing anything else.
Yeah, well, like I said,
So wait a minute. Wait a minute. So you've never made a Tej before. This is just a shot in the dark?
Yeah, I just had African honey, so I figured I'd make an African mead.
And
I'd never had it before. I didn't know any of the flavors.
And it winds up winning a medal at Valkyrie's Horn.
Serendipity's funny like that, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. The show.
How did you approach the guest show? How much do you recall? How much you put in? And you said it was just a couple of days. You got all the flavor you were looking for, right? Yeah, I put in a few sticks. I think they're 2 or 3 inches long and just a couple of sticks. And I'm kind of a believer of tasting it often and then pull it out when it's done. And the more you use, the less time, or you can use less and leave it in longer. So I just kind of started with a safe couple, maybe an ounce or two for a whole gallon.
Okay. Wow.
And yeah, I don't even think it was in there for a week, and it pulled out a ton of bitterness.
So this was a one-shot deal for you. What kind of meads do you typically make? You've won a lot of medals. You're opening your own meadery. Do you have a style a couple of styles that kind of are your bread and butter? Yeah, all my medals so far, almost all my medals have been for big Schramm-style fruit meads. So just tons and tons of fruit, and balance all that acidity with a lot more honey, and just big dessert-style fruit melomels. And I'm also really loving traditionals with oak. Those are my 2 favorites to make. What? Okay, so 2 questions there. I guess number 1, do you have a fruits? What are your favorite fruits to work with on those big melds you make? And then number 2, let's talk about how you introduce the oak. Okay. So mainly blueberry, blackberry, raspberry, and blackcurrant. So those 4 berries. I'm down in Florida, so we don't really have cherries or apples or any of those good things. I can order them, but I'm trying to stay with fruit I can find locally,
just to get a feel for it. And I'm also playing around with tropical fruit a lot. I did actually did jackfruit, and that just got a medal at Orpheus.
Okay, stop right there. I don't know if these two guys know what jackfruit is. How did you tell me about the jackfruit? What did you do to prepare that for your mead?
Well, so when jackfruit, most people know from barbecue, and you use the young jackfruit, which has virtually no flavor. It's all texture.
Yeah.
It kind of has like when you smoke it and barbecue it, it kind of turns like into pulled pork. It's really good. But when the jackfruits get ripe, they get incredibly sweet. And the closest flavor I can say is juicy fruit gum. It's like mango, banana, tropical, funky tropical. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So when I was researching bananas, I came across basically the fact that the flavor responsible for bananas is isomalt acetate, is the majority of the flavor. And the fruit with the second most of that chemical is jackfruit.
Jackfruit.
So we have an amazing amount of Asian markets here in Orlando, and one of them got in pallets of jackfruit. So I went over there and bought 5 jackfruits, which is equal to 125 pounds.
Yeah.
These things are monsters.
A Filipino friend introduced me to jackfruit, and he brought one over, and what the hell is this? Oh my god!
Like a dragon egg.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's like, oh, we're gonna eat this thing, really? I mean, you're crazy. But when he carved it open, I mean, it took a while, man.
It took an hour a piece to peel.
Oh my god! Yeah, he finally got this thing open and started scooping out some of the meat out of it. Oh my god! I never had anything like that before. It's like, holy cow, man! I would buy them if it weren't for trying to get the frickin' meat out of the damn thing. It's too much work, man.
Yeah, and they like bleed this Gorilla Glue resin that just it sticks everything. Yeah.
Oh my god. You're the first person. I don't think we've ever heard of anybody making meat out of a jackfruit, guys. I
don't think so either.
I don't know if Jeff and Ryan even know what a jackfruit even looks like, whether they got them up there in Kansas City or Minnesota. But it's the damnest looking.
I mean, Kansas City's a barbecue town. I've had the jackfruit vegetarian pulled pork.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a serviceable pulled pork for a vegetarian. It works.
Ryan, are you familiar with them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna make a mead with it. I had gotten some freeze-dried jackfruit. I think it was freeze-dried jackfruit that I was going to use to make, some mead with, and I haven't gotten around to it, haven't done it, so I can't say anything, but it was something I wanted to play around with as well.
You got to experience opening up one on your own.
Oh, yeah.
But be prepared to spend some time with it. So, that's all I got to say about it. Anyway, continue on, please, Joe.
So yeah, I had 5 of them taking over the entire kitchen counter, and I waited for them to get as ripe as possible, and they're ripe because they start to get really smelly in a good way. Yeah. So the entire house smells like jackfruit when you open the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my wife and I spent an entire afternoon, I think 5 or 6 hours peeling them.
Yeah.
And
do you have any pictures? We need to get some pictures. I mean, I'm telling you, if you've never peeled open a jackfruit before, it's a job. Okay.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
And then I froze them, froze all the fresh pods, and then a few days later, I racked a dry orange blossom mead on top of them, and it pretty much perfectly encapsulated the ripe jackfruit flavor. So now anyone that drinks it, I can say they tasted ripe jackfruit, because that's exactly what it tastes like. It worked out really well.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. Continue,
Yeah,
Brian.
I'm always doing weird experiments.
Well, you're the first when it comes to jackfruit on this show.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So tell us about how you said you like oaking traditionals, and we've talked a lot about oak on this show, and we are very fans. I'll say fans of kind of some of the oak alternatives. Now, JD and Jeff both have barrels, so not to say that they aren't above putting something in a barrel, but I think we're also very very much fans of some of the oak alternatives, the spirals, the honeycombs, and in particular. But tell us how you like to get oak introduced in your meads.
So I like fermenting with oak or oak cubes. It gives nice structure and body. And then I've also fermented in oak barrels. I really like that, but it's messy. And I love aging in oak barrels because you get the microoxidation, which I think is really important. You can't really get that in a carboy as much. Mm-hmm. But I love the coconut and vanilla that you can get out of the oak, and getting those complex flavors. Just saying this is honey and oak and yeast, and that's where all the flavors come from. And you taste all these wonderful things that are just from those three ingredients, and that's my favorite.
Used barrels or fresh barrels?
Used barrels. We have Palm Ridge Reserve down here in Florida, near Orlando, and they use 5-gallon barrels. So I've been able to get a few, and they've been quite magical. Whiskey barrels, sorry. Yep.
So, tell us a little bit. Are you using barrels and the oak cubes? You said ferment, or are you also aging in them or letting them go in there? Using that oak post fermentation.
I've done both, and I am still doing both. It kind of depends on what's free at the time, but I pretty much want oak to touch every one of my meads at some point, even if it's just not for flavor but for structure.
JD, he said that word, structure.
That's a segment that we're going to touch on. Joe, if you want to hang around for the second segment, this is something that we're going to be talking about.
Sure.
If you've got the time, it's up to you. We'll leave it up to you.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, this is something that I don't know that we talk about it all that often. I think we mention it from time to time. I mean, we talked about oaking and stuff, but I don't think we really talked about developing the mouthfeel. And oaking is not the only method. There's other things out there that'll, of course, give you a mouthfeel to your mead. But if you want to hang out for segment 2, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ryan, any more for Joe on segment 1? Or Jeff?
Well, Joe, I guess, I don't know if there's a way to do it expeditiously, but tell us how you decided to go from, an enthusiastic home mead maker to wanting to do it professionally.
I really, really got addicted to it in the sense that, over the years I've tried different hobbies, and, things come and go, and you kind of lose interest eventually. But mead, it's just been, I have a million things I want to make, and I love doing it every time, and I've really discovered my passion, and this is it. And winning all the competitions, it just kind of, I guess, I'm not bad at this, so maybe I can make a future out of it and do what I love. And I feel like that's the dream.
That's great. You, I want to go back to something. So maybe, if we have to push segment 3, maybe we can do that. But one of the things in your intro that I want to spend some time on was that you said that you did a bunch of single variable experiments or tests. Mm-hmm. That is incredibly important, I think, to a lot of mead makers, and a lot of mead makers they either don't take the time to do it because they want to do so many different things, or they don't have the time to do it, or they don't have the ability to really replicate maybe just skill or care or whatever, but really replicate things. So talk to us a little bit about some of the single variable tests that you did that you found were most beneficial or maybe most surprising.
Sure. Yeah, I came into mead making having tried tons of meads and really, really, really good beers. So I knew if I wasn't making stuff up to par with everyone else, there really wasn't a point. I wanted to go big or go home, basically. So the only way I was going to do that was to learn what makes a good mead. And so I just looked at it programmatically, because that's what I do all day for my job, and just started working through the differences. So I would try different yeasts. I would try fermenting the fruit, aging on the fruit, splitting the fruit, different temperatures, different honeys, different amounts of things, and just taking lots of notes so I can repeat things, and most importantly, doing them simultaneously so I could taste the differences. So I found if you don't do a side-by-side, you really don't have a reference point. One of the biggest, most important things for me was I was fermenting at one temperature for all my tests, and then I figured, okay, the next thing I need to do is ferment at 60 degrees and then ferment one at room temperature. And I was using D21, and D21 likes room temperature, so it won't give you rocket fuel, which is nice. And it was a triple berry mead that I did this on. And once the mead was done, I did a side-by-side tasting of them with my wife. And they were both great, but the differences were unbelievable. The cold ferment was fresh fruit, very bright and juicy. And the room temperature ferment was dark, jammy, cooked fruit. And like I said, they were both good, but without tasting them side by side, you really couldn't say the difference. And that was the most valuable test I think I did that was strikingly different.
Interesting.
Wow.
I ended up blending them together to get the most complexity.
And you've said that you've also been using some of the different Kveik yeasts.
Yep.
Tell us what you've been doing with those.
Well, I'm down here in Florida, so when I heard they liked hot temperatures, I went up. I put them to a test. I did a 15-gallon batch in a big 120-liter Spidle, and what I did was I put the whole thing in a giant black trash bag. The whole fermenter in the trash bag, and put the fermenter on a furniture dolly, and basically put it out on the back porch and let it ferment in the sun.
Oh, man.
I had a temperature probe in there. It was hitting 127 degrees.
Oh, wow. Holy cow.
Wow.
It finished in
127 degrees. How'd that turn out?
It was amazing. It came out so clean, and it finished in like 2.5 days.
And the yeast survived 127 degrees.
It fermented dry, yeah.
Wow.
That is awesome.
And I did two smack packs for 15 gallons, and I think I'll just do one smack pack next time.
Did you report that back to the yeast company and let them know that you had 127 degree ferment?
I haven't, but I should send him a picture.
Oh my God, I would.
And it was so impressive that I took a bunch of samples to the local brewery and basically had a bunch of people try it and try and pull out any off flavors, and they couldn't find any. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
I'd report that back to the company. You might be in line for a lifetime supply of yeast. Holy cow.
That yeast is unstoppable.
Yeah. Oh my God, 127 degrees.
So there's several different strains of Kveik. Which one were you using?
This was either Voss or Horndal. I can't remember which one it was. I've been playing with both of them.
From Omega?
Yeah, you gotta connect with Lance. Lance definitely will want to know. I update him on some of the stuff that I'm doing with his yeast, and he's always saying that, they are so focused on beer that they don't have enough time to play with everything they want to play with. They'd love to get, more feedback from mead makers and cider makers and everybody else. So, like JD is saying, I know that they would really appreciate hearing from you, especially Lance, and that he'd probably send you another, 10 or 20 pack to play with if you promise to do it again with him.
I'll definitely shoot him a message. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have
great. Well, JD, I'm looking at the clock here. We definitely should get into segment 2.
Yeah, we should. Joe, we can go on all night, my friend.
Sure.
This is definitely a setup for another visit here at the Mead House. But hey, let's move on to segment 2. Joe's going to stick around with us, guys. This is Joe Lee from Orlando, Florida. He's a medal-winning mead maker, and he's just we're talking jackfruit, 127-degree ferments. I mean, I tell you what, this is a hell of a show. Segment 2, Joe. You know what? A couple of things that I think we've mentioned it before on the show a few times, but I don't know that we've really dwelled on it or spent a whole lot of time on it, Jeff and Ryan. When we talk about structure and balance, achieving that mouthfeel that everybody talks so much about, and of course that's a big thing when it comes to judging meads. We've got 2 judges here, Jeff and Joe, both BJCP certified mead judges. That's a big thing when it comes to judging as well. So how do you get there? I had a conversation with Al Boyce and Matt Weedy at the after party. I think it was Saturday night at Valkyrie's Horn. So let's play this cut, and then we'll dig a little deeper into this. So here's Al and Matt Weedy at the after party.
Standing here with Matt White and Al Boyce. Al and I were talking about structure a few minutes ago.
We just finished talking
Okay, we're going to do this. How do you define structure in mead making?
I think it can mean many things to different people, but the way I define it is something that has body and then also bridges the gap between acidity and sweetness, so it all comes together in one harmonious blend. Sometimes I wouldn't say one note, but it can be more simple, and it can be, I don't want to say that structure means complex either, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean just because it's complex that it has structure, but I also think it has something to do with body and then bridging the gap between acidity and sweetness.
I think Matt's on to something. What do you think, Al?
Agreed. It's a very complex issue, and I think as your guests coming up in future weeks and months, I hope you guys discuss this issue more. I think everybody I've asked tonight has a different opinion. So.
The discussion that is usually had always centers around balance. Okay, finding that right balance, acidity versus sweetness. Nobody's ever talked about structure before. Why is that?
I think people talk about structure. It's something where it's almost like a Christmas tree to be able to hang your ornaments on, right? You need something to be able to put all the different flavor and aroma elements into the mead. It doesn't necessarily mean it's complex, but it has to be something that will allow you to put those different flavor components into your mead mead and still work in a balance. But you're right. I think it's talked more about in the wine world, but it's certainly something that's needed, and you can tell when a mead doesn't have it. I'll say it's kind of like pornography. I know when I see it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Hey, all about structure with Matt Whitey and Al Boyce.
Cheers.
Cheers. You know, guys, when it comes to structure was something that Al, before I turned the recorder on, he and I were having this discussion. He says, you guys really need to do a segment on structure. I said, well, why don't you lead it off here? So he got with Matt Whitey, and I flipped the recorder on, and we had a little 2-3 minute deal there with Matt and Al. Structure is something that's never mentioned. I've never heard the word structure mentioned in mead making. Now, we've always talked about balance and mouthfeel. So let me toss this over to Jeff, our resident mead judge here on the show. When it comes to mouthfeel, Jeff, what does structure mean to you? What kind of an impact are you looking for based off of that?
So, and you know, much like Matt alluded to in the clip, I'm not sure that what I consider structure is the same per se that everybody else considers structure. But you know, when I think about the structure of a mead, it goes a little bit above and beyond just the balance of the different flavors. It incorporates, you know, mouthfeel. Obviously, it incorporates kind of that liveliness on the tongue, so that, you know, the California Stars that we talked about at the very start, I think is a great example of this. I mean, there is,
yeah,
it's almost, you know, it's not thick, but it's present, and it has a body to it, and it has a level of weight in your mouth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then there's also, you know, one of the things that I really loved about that California Stars is that you could taste the alcohol in it, and it played nicely with everything else.
Yes. Very much.
And it almost left like a tingle on my lips as I was drinking it. It's rare for me to have a mead that is noticeably alcoholic, that's still, you know, highly enjoyable, and you're still getting all the flavors and the character out of it. And I think, you know, it goes above and beyond just the balance of, you know, the sweet and the acid and the tannin, and you know, you can throw the balance of alcohol in there too, for that matter. You know, there's the body has to complement without taking too much precedence away from the flavors going into it, and it is really tricky to define.
Yeah, let's toss it over to Joe. You're a BJCP judge as well, mead judge, and when you're judging meads, and I know, you know, I've heard judges talk about. Of course, you know, we've got our resident judge here on our show, Jeff, but I've heard him talk about it. But when it comes to the mouthfeel, what is structure? How do you wrap that all around structure?
I kind of feel like structure is kind of the backbone. It makes it so it's not thin and watery. It gives it more of a grippiness in the mouth. It gives you something. It just gives it a thickness. So I think it's very related to mouthfeel and body, and it can really thicken it up.
You know, when I am no mead judge, but I have learned to taste things from a good friend of mine, Chris Trevino, Liquor Hound on YouTube. If you guys want to follow him, he and I've talked quite extensively about this subject. And about tasting. I mean, he's a certified spirits specialist, and he tastes a lot of spirits and analyzes or reviews, a lot of spirits. So I've learned from him. I've learned what to look for
in aromas and in taste. And structure to me, I mean, let's take this Campfire bourbon. I mean, it's made of rye, so I get that. That spicy character that you will always get out of a good piece of rye toast. Okay. It's also got a blend of bourbon in it. So you detect the slight vanillins in there that kind of come through almost up front, more so than the spice does. The spice doesn't really hit you until the back. And then finally, you're left with this smoky, if you've ever had a good smoky scotch, and Ryan, I have no idea where you're big into these scotches. You know the regions and where all these scotches come from. I wouldn't know where to place this one in the region, but you're left with this smoky, peaty taste, and to me, that's just a complexity. To me, that's the structure of this whiskey. That's the way I view it. Okay, Ryan, you might have another take on it. Let's hear it from you.
Yeah, so as Joe was talking about, everything Joe said is, to me is like around body, kind of like he said, talking about backbone, mouthfeel, things like that. Going to what Matt said, sometimes if I would put it a different way, complex doesn't mean complicated.
Yeah.
You can have a very complex strawberry mead. That doesn't mean a complicated raspberry, chipotle, lactose,
vanilla, strawberry,
vanilla, mint, pine,
chocolate mead.
Mead. I asked Tom Repus. Tom Repus makes an amazingly complex strawberry mead, but it's not complicated. It's one thing. It's strawberry. Yeah. So, it's complexity. Now, when I think about structure, I think about, let's just contrast that with balance. We talk about balance. I'd say balance is two-dimensional and structure is three-dimensional. So we talk about balance, talk about acid and tannin, sweetness and dry, this kind of thing, versus the three-dimensional nature of structure, and saying going beyond the two-dimensional balance, does it bring that third-dimensional, complexity, pleasure, intricacy, subtleness to it beyond that? So, Matt said something. He kind of gave that old, Supreme Court. I can't tell you what it is, but I know it. But I know it when I see it. Type answer.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that people, like on paper, you see, it's a strawberry mead, but then you taste it and you say, wow, this is just checking every single box and then some. So I get that. But I think that as we talk about structure, we can develop more of a lexicon, more of a vocabulary, and we can talk about what really makes that structured mead. And again, for me, it's bringing that three-dimensional aspect of it. So it has balance on several different levels, and it has complexity, and it has the drinking enjoyment or pleasurability to it. And as Joe knows, or will quickly find out, the very best compliment you can get in a tap room is, "I'll have another."
That's true. That is so true. So how do we get there, guys? we've often talked about dropping oak. I mean, we talked to Joe about his oaking, with his meads. And that's certainly one method. I mean, looking to develop a mouthfeel. Ryan, we've also talked about, I think you did a couple of ferments where you actually dropped some wood into the fermentation. A lot of people, don't understand why that, why would you do it there? And why would you? Can you get a little deeper on putting the wood? And is it a certain kind of wood, or what are we looking for, when we're dealing with wood in the fermentation, not as a adjunct later on in secondary, or during the aging process?
Well, let's give this to Joe. Joe is our
sounds good.
Engineer, tester extraordinaire. Let's let Joe tell us what he's discovered in fermenting on oak versus aging on oak.
So my basic understanding comes from I read up a bunch about wine because I read as much as possible stuff about mead out there. But then once that kind of ran dry, I started moving into the wine world to see what because they've spent so much time and money on this stuff.
Yeah.
So I figured a lot would translate. And what I learned is there's something, I believe it's called sacrificial tannin. So during the fermentation, when all these magical things are happening, if you have tannins from oak in there, they kind of act as scaffolding for everything else to build along. So you're literally building in, you're literally building a structure in the wine with these sacrificial tannins. So they don't add flavor, they just add body.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly, I think I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. What I am going for when I put oak in primary is I'm not trying to get an oaky flavor, but I'm trying to get that's a new term to me, sacrificial tannin, but it makes perfect sense to kind of the way I was describing it, an episode or two ago. I think that an easy A/B test, and now if you want to do those, do it the way Joe does it, go out and actually make 2 batches. But if you want an easier A/B test and you're willing to spend a couple of bucks, go to a wine shop or a bottle shop with a large wine selection and buy a Chardonnay that's been fermented on oak, and then buy a Chardonnay that's been fermented in oak. Aged in oak.
Yeah.
And you will see a very big, or it doesn't have to be a Chardonnay, it could be any wine, but you will find 2 extremely different wines, one that was fermented in oak and one that was, aged in oak.
Yeah. Jeff, when we, you're a mead judge and you've tasted a lot of meads. And oaking is certainly one of the methods of creating that body, that structure, or help building upon that structure. I look at it as a kind of a foundational process, like you'd build a building. But you've tasted a lot of meads in your judging process, but not all of them have been oaked meads. Okay, to give it that body or that structure. So what other ways can we build that structure, that body, into a mead, without having to, cut down the oak tree in the backyard?
Well, I would say probably the next most common are other sources of tannin up front. I know one of my favorite tricks here is to ferment on whole blueberries, so you get all the tannins from the skin. Playing with that gives a beautiful amount of body to the finished product, and you can let those sit for 4 to 6 weeks before you pull a fruit, and you'll get just a huge amount of tannin. It becomes kind of a moot point whether or not you want to oak it at that point, just because there is so much tannin in there already. And even in like the what do I want to say, the session mead that I made, I think it was back in the springtime, I probably only used, I want to say, about 5 pounds of fruit in a 5-pound batch, but still had a decent amount of body for such a small, 5 pounds of fruit in a 5-gallon batch. It still had a very decent amount of body, even for just a very light, supposed to be easy drinking mead. There are a handful of other sources of tannin you can use, for example, teas, or there are a handful of spices that I think will also contribute tannin as well. So that's definitely one way to do it. I have a little cheat that I've discovered for adding a little extra body or enhancing the body of a mead after it's basically been, I'm getting close to that fine tuning phase where I say, okay, it's time to put it in a bottle, and that is actually food grade glycerin. You don't want to take too heavy a hand with it, but a half an ounce to an ounce per gallon can actually just enhance that body just a little bit much when I feel like it's lacking. The same way that aging on oak for like a year will add some body to the meat. Maybe not a year, maybe 3 to 6 months, but still, you can kind of cheat that a little bit using some glycerin, and it comes out very well from what I found. That the glycerin doesn't seem to add any off flavors or any really. So I've been doing that once or twice, and I've been relatively pleased with the results.
Ryan, well, let me go to Joe. I don't know, what is that? Let's just put the question to Joe. There are tannins that are available in a jar. I got one on the tip of something red, something. Guys, help me out with it. What's it called? Red? I can't remember.
OptiRed?
OptiRed is one of them. Have you ever used canned tannins at all to create body and mouthfeel? Yeah.
I do like them, yeah.
How did you use them?
Added a small amount in fermentation, and I think they're the very definition of sacrificial, because they're kind of already, it's already a powder, so it doesn't even need to be absorbed. It just kind of dissolves into it, and then gets eaten by the yeast. And
that's right up front in fermentation. So
yeah, but I believe you could also use them in. I think you can also use them in secondary, but I haven't played around with that.
Ryan, I think we've talked a little bit. I know we've mentioned things like OptiRed, and there's a couple others out there as well. I think every local brew store carries some kind of a grape tannin out there that can be used as well. What's your experience with using canned tannins?
I was turned on to it by Carvin Wilson. I was, sitting at his bar one night in Scottsdale, and we were talking about how to develop that body, and he said you got to use OptiRed or OptiWhite, depending on what you're making, and so I did. And Carvin, thank you. I know you listen. Thank you very much, because that has, in the past, I'd been told it's great, but it's thin, or it's got amazing flavor, but it's lacking in body, and, when I started using it, I stopped getting told the but. It's good, but it's great, but,
but
yeah. And
but the important part here, the important thing, Ryan, that we're to mention here is we're not talking about oak tannins. We're not talking about oaking a mead, right? This is something different.
Right. This is a little little sachet of powder that you just put in a quarter teaspoon at a time, and check out. So it's right. It's that way. It's kind of like if you buy a wine kit. If you buy a wine kit, I mean, you want to make sure that if you buy a red wine grape kit, it comes with grape skins, so that you can get that. And exactly, you're exactly right. So this is it. Now, I have not noticed a difference. Like when we say these things, I don't want people to get the sense that it's like an artificial flavoring or an artificial sweetener. You're going to get that aspartame, taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's the tannin that you get from
imitation strawberries
is not going to be some artificial tannin, that you can pick out versus had you fermented it on oak. I mean, yes, there might be other differences, just like, Joe was talking about the microoxidation and things like that, but it's not going to be like drinking a Pepsi versus a Diet Pepsi.
Yeah.
And you can taste the artificial difference, that kind of a thing. But yes, introducing tannin is incredibly important, and using tannin to create balance, create structure, enhance your mouthfeel, all of those things, you've got to do it. I think, maybe a poor equivalent is back when people would add their acid, eighth of a teaspoon of acid, in their meat, malic acid or citric acid or whatever
blend.
they were doing to try to get that. And JD, I know that's going to set off an alarm bell.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Acid blend. Oh, yeah. Joe, when it comes to this whole balance and mouthfeel and everything, you said you like to do a lot with berried fruits, blackberries, you name it. The seeds of these fruits, have you had any bad experiences with having too much tannins being released from some of these seeds? Now, one thing that I've heard in the past is people who have taken, 6 or 7 pounds of say, blackberries, and they'll put them in a blender and, blend the crap out of them, and then wonder why their mead has this bitter taste to it. Have you had an experience along those lines, or what's your thoughts on that?
You definitely don't want to break the seeds. I'm a big fan of freezing and thawing, and that does a whole bunch to break the cell walls and let all the juices out. Yeah. You can also use pectic enzyme, and it's really cool when you sprinkle it on the fruit, because the fruits will, if you do it overnight, the fruits will turn kind of ghost white as all their juices have run out. Like white raspberries and stuff, or red raspberries go white, or like a very pale pink. So you can really see them working.
Yeah.
But absolutely. In the starting out, I quickly learned that if you leave it on the fruit for too long, you're going to get a very almost harsh bitterness from over extraction. Because once the fermentation is finished, you have the alcohol. So the alcohol is now pulling things out of the skins and seeds that are left.
I have guys, I'm telling you, this SO4, it's still bubbling like crazy. And we're like, 5 or 6 days into this thing? This is one of those freezer clean out things. That's like 10 or 12 pounds of, I didn't even measure it. But I know it's close to 10 to 12 pounds of all different kind of mixed fruits. I've got peaches and plums and berries of all different kinds. Went into this thing, and I had no idea what the displacement was. So I just put the fruit in the damn thing, put some water in, added, I'm guessing, somewhere around 13 pounds of honey, best guesstimate, and filled the rest of it up full, with water until it reached about 6 gallons. Dude, this thing took off fermenting like crazy. It was coming up through the airlock. The wife happened to walk by the fermenter and notice this pool of red stuff on the lid of the fermenter. Jeff, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So quickly pull the airlock off and then shove a hose down in there for a blow off. I mean, this thing was fermenting like crazy. So it's 5-6 days into it now, and I really think I need to pull that bag out of there and to avoid what Joe's talking about here, just kind of overdoing it with this bag of fruit, because I don't want any bad flavors coming out of that thing. But anyway, that's another story. We'll maybe talk about it more next week. Joe, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, my friend. We got to have you back again. This has been fun. I want to hear more about this jackfruit. I mean, this is absolutely a first. And congratulations on the medals. Really loved having you here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, well,
JD, I want to, if it's okay with the house, there was a question from one of our listeners that, this is going to bleed into segment 3 that I want to throw to Joe before he takes off. So, Joe, I want to steal you for 3 more minutes, ask you one of our listener questions, which is what we do in segment 3, and then let you go.
Sure.
So this comes from our listener, Justin. And Justin says, when adding wood chips to the ferment, toasted or not toasted, or what level of toast does it matter?
So my first thought with that question, it makes me nervous because I see people on forums getting wood chips from the hardware store or wood chips for barbecuing.
From underneath the table saw.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so they're getting barbecue wood chips and kind of toasting them themselves.
Yeah. 911, please. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I've heard some bad things about those chips, but you probably shouldn't be soaking them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're, depending on the flavors you want, if you're getting actual oak chips from the homebrew store, the lighter the toast, the more kind of raw oak flavors you're going to get. Whereas all the fun flavors like coconut and vanilla comes from toasting. So you probably want like a medium to a medium plus for those good flavors. And the higher toast level you go, the more, I don't want to say smokiness, but you're going to get more of that charred.
Char,
yeah. So they all add different flavors, and that's another great one for a simultaneous test of testing all the different toast levels.
And if your mead comes out tasting like lighter fluid, then you know damn good and well you used the wrong chips.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joe. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back. We'd love to talk about Zymarium. We'd love to sample some of your stuff, and we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Been a blast, man.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye.
Oh my God! From jackfruit to wood chips under the table saw to I don't know what. Joe Lee down in Orlando, Florida. He's the one that put together that Tej. Valkyrie's horn was able to gather a medal out of it. He did medal, right?
Yeah. He medaled in the historical category with his Tej.
Yeah, and what a gas, man! We got to have him back on. I mean, he just what a load of fun. The jackfruit. I mean, you got to Google this thing. If all of our listeners out, if you don't have no idea what it is, Google jackfruit, so you get an idea of what we're talking about here on the show. It's one of those things where, just Google it. You'll learn more. Anyway, Facebook friends, guys, I think we got time for just a few. This is where we try to answer questions based on our own experience, no formal expertise, just what we've been able to experience in our own brew house. So let's go over to Jeff. He's always got some good ones from Reddit. What do you got for us tonight?
So this one is from user JohnFinn826. Says, how should I deal with potential bottle bombs?
Oh.
Says, hello. Yeah, this is one that, like, first-time mead makers, you deal with.
Treat them like hand grenades? Treat them like hand grenades.
No kidding. I bottled my first batch of traditional mead about 5 weeks ago without stabilizing first. I know, big mistake. The Lalvin D47 I was using was fermenting incredibly slowly because I forgot to give it nutrients until a week into primary. But I hadn't seen any change in specific gravity for a few weeks when I bottled it. However, it seems like fermentation restarted in the bottles because when I opened one last night, the cork popped out forcefully. The mead itself was about as carbonated as champagne. Tasty, though. I examined other bottles and saw signs of activity in them as well. What would be the best way to deal with the other bottles? They're standard 750 milliliter wine bottles I got from local homebrew shop, corked, no wax. Should I open them up, add stabilizers? Should I open them up and just reopen them periodically to relieve some pressure from the CO2? I'm not sure how to proceed, but I definitely don't want them to pop their corks or explode.
So I'll jump in first here.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer this in kind of three different ways. The first way is that what can you do with these bottles that you're now seeing activity in? If you've got an auxiliary fridge, I'd throw them in the fridge. I would put them in the fridge. I'd cool them down, and that's all I'd do with them. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
If you listen to the show, I've said it explicitly a few times, but implicitly, you better know it by now. Ryan is a maximum efficiency guy. So how can you increase your efficiency and decrease your wasted effort? And you open those things up, you add stabilizer, you release the pressure, you're not only causing effort or creating effort, but you're also creating opportunity for infection and oxidation and everything else. So what I would do is I'd just cool them way down. Cool them way down, slow the yeast down, put it to sleep. You're not going to kill it, but put it to sleep. And then, drink them out of the fridge. Open them up, put them in a glass, drink them in the fridge. Boom, done. Great. Okay. Now what do you do when you want it? That's the first way. Second, I said I was going to do this in three ways. That's number one. Number two is when you are creating a mead that has residual sweetness in it, you got to stabilize it, my friend. Do the sorbate, do the sulfite, and stabilize it. You can cold crash it, rack it, whatever your process is going to be, but stabilize it so that doesn't happen. We talked about chemicals last week. Listen to that episode if you need to. Okay, so the third way is you want to bottle condition. This is what I do with a lot of my stuff. You want to bottle condition. That means you take it all the way dry. You go all the way dry with it in the fermenter. Then you put it in your bottling bucket with a little bit more priming sugar. You can use calculators to figure out how much. And then maybe a little bit of yeast depending on how long you've had it in there. If I got big braggots, that have been in a carboy for 2 years, and then before I bottle them, I'll throw some champagne yeast in there just to make sure that they got, good, active, vigorous yeast to bottle condition them up with. But you want to make sure it's calculated and that it's dry to start with. You have the right amount of sugar, yeast if you need it, and that then you've created now the appropriate level of carbonation for what you're doing. if you want to do champagne style meads, you can do it. You can do the the method, the champagne method. The upside down rack thing. My cousin I talk about, he's a wine. My cousin I talk about, he wants to do a real champagne, not a piment, but a true champagne that he does that way. It's a labor of love, but it can be done. Then you freeze it, you uncork it, you recork it. You let it unfreeze a little bit. But anyway, that's my nickel's worth. Maybe we got into like 38 cents worth there. I don't know.
No, you got it. I mean, my only thing would be to put it in the refrigerator. I mean, get a really cold refrigerator. Because it's kind of a done deal by that time. So my deal would be cool them off. Period.
Yep.
Done deal. So, we got time for one more, guys. Let's go back over to Ryan. Have you got another one from?
So this comes from Basil, and either we've had a Basil before, or it's the same Basil with another question, or I've just read this question before. So I don't know. You guys tell me. Basil wants to know: has anyone done a chocolate braggot? I am interested in notes, advice, results. Was good? Would you make another? What ingredients would you suggest? So I'll toss this one around the table, and then I'll, kind of end back here. But starting it off, so Basil, what you do is you take Pilsen malt, honey, and Hershey's syrup. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Jeff, how would you go about approaching a chocolate braggot?
It's funny you mentioned that. I am in the process of putting together a s'mores braggot, which will incorporate chocolate flavors. You're gonna want to do a malt forward beer style. I chose like a sweet style stout, and realistically, the best way to do it that I have found that I've seen is gonna be secondary additions. You've basically got two options. You can do the cocoa nibs in secondary. You want to use an appropriate amount. I've been playing with about half an ounce to an ounce, and leaning towards an ounce to get a good cocoa flavor. Leave them sit for a week. If you don't have enough, cocoa flavor by that point, you got to pull them, put more in. But that's a waiting game. And like Joe said, taste frequently. See what flavors are coming out. Your other option is to use an extract like Amaretti. I'm going to play it a little bit of both in my my s'mores stout braggot. So I'm going to use some Amaretti s'mores extract that I got from the Iron Bee. But I'm also going to enhance that with some cacao nibs. I'm going to throw some other flavors in there to try and boost those little, some smoked malts and things like that to try and get some more of the campfire s'mores flavors going on. That's essentially how I would approach it. Either use an extract in secondary or use a cacao nibs. And remember, you need a level of residual sweetness in order to really bring out the cacao flavor. If you've got a very dry mead, no matter how much cacao you put in there, it's not going to taste right. I think back in February, I was working on the chocolate cherry mead issue, and I think I inadvertently put too much cacao flavor in there, not realizing that, this is kind of dry and it's not really presenting the best cacao flavor. If I had to do that again, I would have used something with a residual sweetness to it, or back sweetened it at the time I needed to taste it. But that's my 25 cents and change worth.
Yeah.
JD, what do you think?
Yeah, I got to go along with Jeff. I mean, unless you're looking for one of those dark chocolate flavors, which doesn't really work a whole. I just don't get the dark chocolate in dark like stouts or porters. I kind of like my wife's take on it. I mean, she loves her porters and stouts, but she likes them a little bit on the sweet side. And I think that brings more of the chocolate flavors out. So I got to go with Jeff on this one. The cacao beans, let me tell you something, guys. When you roast a couple of pounds of those in your house and it suddenly turns, the whole house smells like one giant Hershey bar. That's got to inspire you, really inspire you. But I would keep it on the sweet side. I'd also use some dark grains. I'd use steep some grains along with it, some 120, crystal 120 or at least 80. Start there, and maybe even use a dark malt. Instead of using a Pilsen.
Do make a chocolate malt. I'm just saying.
Yeah, in there you got to kind of be careful with with the amount of cacao beans you might put in secondary, but. I like chocolate, like everybody else. Getting there, I think you got to kind of keep it on the sweet side. I got to go along with Jeff, Ryan. That's going to bring more of that cocoa out. I think. I've heard of people using cocoa powder in the past, but I don't know that I've heard a whole lot of success stories. I think I've run across more people using, the cacao beans, more so than cocoa powder. Cocoa powder still has some of the oils in it, I believe, and that may be something that you have to deal with later on. But roasted cacao beans, wrap them up in a paper bag, or if you've got some of that baking. What do you call that baking paper?
Parchment paper?
Parchment paper, yeah. Wrap them up in parchment paper to help soak up some of the oils that might leach out. And don't grind them. Don't beat them up. Just leave them how they are, and you'll be fine. Ryan, have you got a last comment on that?
Yeah, so I make a Belgian chocolate milk stout braggot or something to that effect, like a Belgian chocolate milk stout braggot. Now the Belgian just means the yeast, so don't get hung up on like Belgian chocolate. But I just use Belgian yeast. But I use lactose in mine because I want that sweetness. Absolutely. That's where I get it. I get it from the lactose.
There you go.
Now, with the chocolate, I do it a couple of ways. I use the dark grains to build a flavor profile that's going to fit what I want.
Yeah.
Now, chocolate malt and dark chocolate malt sound great, but people just like the idea of the names. If you're trying to get chocolate flavor, don't buy chocolate malt. Don't buy dark chocolate malt, because you're just going to get roastiness, and you're not really going to get that chocolate. You got to get at best you get a light chocolate malt, like a pale chocolate malt. Sometimes it's called pale chocolate malt. Sometimes it's called light chocolate malt. But you need to go a little bit lighter to get kind of that chocolatey flavor. I also then like adding in some of the caramel malts. The caramel malts will bring some more sweetness, especially if you go lower on the caramel malt. So you get some caramel malt, light caramel malt, light pale chocolate. You start to develop that chocolate profile that you'd identify as chocolate. You back it up with lactose, and then I also add cocoa nibs. Then you add the cocoa nibs. I like making my own extract. So I take cocoa nibs and then a neutral grain spirit, like a vodka, some sort of like a decent neutral vodka, and create my own extract that way. I just find it's easier to play with rather than adding the nibs in themselves. Yes, you could absolutely use Amaretti.
Another good
think
choice.
Matt Whitey from the Iron Bee won a bottle of the chocolate Amaretti extract. I think he did. And so I might have to ask him what he thinks about using that. So yes, you could use that. But if you don't, and you should, there's no reason you shouldn't have the Amaretti chocolate extract, because all you have to do is become a key holder in the Key Holder Club, and we will send you an Amaretti gift card. And with the Amaretti gift card, you can buy your own Amaretti chocolate extract.
There you go.
But I was playing with some Meridian cocoa nibs and created my own extract from those. So then I added that. And then keep in mind, everybody, what makes a chocolate taste like a chocolate is vanilla.
Yep.
So I also added it when I was making my extract. I added some vanilla. So really, I had dark grains. I had the right kind of dark grains. So the pale chocolate, the light caramel, then the lactose, then the cocoa and vanilla, and then I used the Pilsen malt to create the structure, the body, and then wildflower honey, because at that point variety wasn't going to matter. Maybe Zambian honey sounds fabulous. Maybe I should use Zambian.
It's already got that chocolate
but
built in.
I use wildflower because I have Zambian, and then added Belgian yeast, and really got something that I thought was really special, which was the Belgian chocolate milk stout braggot. That is the approach I took. So Basil, that hopefully gives you some inspiration. And if not, like I said, just open a Guinness, open a Trad, pour them together, and stir in some Hershey's syrup, and maybe that'll do it for you.
I love it. I tell you, next week we'll be talking about jackfruit again. Hey, we're going to leave it right there. Thanks for listening, hanging out with us on this episode. And special thanks to our guest, medal-winning home mead maker Joe Lee, who was kind enough to stick around for a couple of segments here and introduce us to jackfruit for the first time here at the Mead House. And I got to say one thing. Ashfish Vine, keep Evan Henderson in that barrel room. I'm taking the last swig tonight of this California Stars, of the little 1 ounce pour that I poured. This stuff is off the rocks, dude. Keep it up. Good work. And hey, don't forget, let us know what you're brewing. We might even give you a call. Email us, info@themeadhouse.com, or just send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House. In the meantime, happy mead making. That's it for this episode. Ryan flips the lights off. Jeff, slam that door shut. We'll be back in a week with episode number 141 from The Mead House. We're gone.